Hi, this is Mark. In this video, I'm going to explain why creativity is not fully novel or original. Um, it could be a tendency to think so, but in terms of creativity, it's not. It always starts at a point that is well before the original thought was created. Um, if you imagine the train, like you think of even the lineage. Um, where you stand right here or today is attributed to a huge chain of events that are on all connected in a all, even towards the beginning. It's just essentially like if any of those events were altered slightly, likelihood of being here would be very, very low. It's in proportion to when the event was changed. If you change the event more distant in the past, it causes more alteration in the future. Um, but in terms of like your lineage or your family lineage, the genetics are evolving over time, and it's creating all these. It's really what dictates the potential. You get a permutation from your parents, and the combinations are infinite, but the ratios we don't know exactly how the genetics are uh, what the ratios are, like what proportion you're going to get from your mom or what proportion you're going to get from your dad. But it's the permutations are combined in such a way that makes it seems like it's so unique. But it's and in terms of the original thought, it follows the same pathway. Anytime we're compiling bits of information or you're reading a book, you have an experience, you're soaking in, you're internalizing, and all these events. That's a repository for creativity. Of course, the more you have in a repository, the more potential you have to create. Um, and essentially, that it's all dictated by the chain of events, uh, or the initial point is what generates the creativity. Essentially, it's a prerequisite for that original thought. If that did not exist, if that chain was weakened and broken uh, completely, if it was broken completely, it's very difficult, to um, come up with something truly novel. You need bits of information. You need chaos, and it starts with the chaos. But how do we get the chaos? And the only way we get it is through, like, think about technology. Someone created that, and someone created all these events that we've experienced right now. Uh, it's altered by whoever created whether it's the environments or um, the circumstances, or the how would I put this, properties of the event. For instance, if you go to how would I put it? If you are in a creative field, for instance, let's say art, you're gonna notice the predecessors, their artwork, and that's gonna maybe invoke a new thought and a new idea, and all these ideas that are invoked or created are instigated by previous creation. So it all starts with previous creation, and therefore it's not completely original, and ultimately, we have to have some information that's transmitted into the mind in order to even create something um, fluidly. I mean, it just, of course, uh, I think, and it all stems from what already resides, whether it's in the subconscious, whether, the conscious mind dictates kind of which direction it's going to follow, and ultimately, we don't have full control over this. Of course, but eventually, like your creativity evolves over time, and you notice how it evolves through whatever you're inputting into the mind. If you input nothing, it's going to decay. If you become depressed and things collapse, your consciousness collapse, and basically your mind becomes empty, your mind becomes slow, you don't have the ideas. You start losing the ideas. You lose almost that creative, the energy that is needed to actually bring it to life. It's not depression. Not necessarily kills creativity, but it really almost puts it in hibernation. That's how I view it. Because when your processing speed collapses, when your mind slows down, when your memory gets compressed, when you're losing memory, you're losing information, and therefore you're not able to use that potential that you once had. But then when you start getting happy, you notice things start opening up again. The range opens, your consciousness expands, and therefore you have more potential for creativity. So what really instigated that? It's not, it's really what instigated the change. You gotta consider, there's some event that created that, which ultimately led to this, and so forth. So yeah, I just think like with creative achievement, and this is interesting because I was a mathematics major, and when we wrote proofs, we start with the premise and follow with the intermediate argument, and then try to arrive at the conclusion. But we never use the word I, and the reason for that is to appreciate the predecessors who put forth the work to allow us to actually get to that realization. The only way to get to a proof is you need previous input, previous information, and then you can manipulate, because creativity is a manipulation of what has been inputted into the mind, and manipulate in so many different ways as a testament of the previous creation. And that's why we use the word we. We never use I, because it's kind of like it's too prideful. It's too you shouldn't take full credibility for your work that was ultimately not 100%. It wasn't fully original. It wasn't you who created that. It was a chain of like the information, all the information that you soaked in from previous creators or inventors or intellectuals who paved the way and allowed you to come up to that conclusion. And otherwise, if it was null, if everything was void, I mean, there would be the potential would collapse. And there, that's why nowadays I think there's more potential for creativity because we have more out input and there's more pathways to lead to creativity. But there's also more influence, social influence. There's more. Basically, there's always been conformity, and I think what conformity really kind of uh, inhibits creativity. That's why creative individuals tend to be not unconventional, like Tesla. He didn't care what people thought. I think the more you care what people think of you, it's going to depress your creativity. The more you let external influences affect you, it's going to ultimately depress creativity. Creativity is, you do it, you try to fail, like Thomas Edison or uh, whoever invented the light bulb. I don't know his name. If it's Edison, I forgot. But I think mentioned something about attempting it, or failing 99 times and then attaining success in the 100th attempt. And, that's just shows, you can at least take failure with acceptance and allow yourself to get better and improve and improve. And if you take failure so critically, it's going to collapse. Like the ability to create is going to collapse. If and the thing is, the pathway to creativity is really just going beyond the known, going into the unconventional, or being comfortable in the unknown, because anxiety depresses creativity, especially. And if you're comfortable in the unknown, dealing with chaos, pulling, because ultimately that's how society expands. We have someone actually translates their mind, goes in, beyond the known boundary into the creative realm space, and then compiles or able to assimilate or organize the chaos and compile it and create something that is, or invent something that's not very novel. But that invention had to do it had to do with something that was previously invented or previous information. It's attributed to that, and that's why, like when you write books or this, you appreciate anyone who was, who helped lead to the success. Because at the end of the day, uh, without any of this, like without, I just think today the opportunities are so immense, but it's interesting. Uh, like I think there is more competition, and the more external possibility, or there's more possibilities for external influence, and to leverage creativity, one has to, you know, forget about the failures, forget about putting it out there, you know, thinking that you're going to be um criticized in some form, for it's good to, at least be somewhat of a perfectionist, but or try to improve. But creativity at the end of the day is very chaotic. It's something you can't you can't try to put it in so much order and try to uh, minimize, because ultimately a lot of time I think it's proportional to energy, and that's why in energy there is some relation with emotion and energy, and you do find a lot of creative individuals, although it's not 100. The correlation is, I don't know how strong, but with mental illness, they say like there's a lot of creative individuals who exhibit those effects, but it's probably attributed to the physiological problems due to the undertaking of creative endeavors that leads to that, or physiological stress, physiological, because one, you're dealing with chaos, and you have to take a, I think sometimes there is some need for validation, always in the back of your mind, even if you think you can avoid it. Uh, Being very creative, there is, if it doesn't lead anywhere, that can be pretty hit hard. It can hit quite hard on the system, and of course, that could probably contribute to maybe alcohol problems. So it's probably somewhat related to that, but um, I know I've kind of gone on a tangent. But just in this video, I just want to mention that you know, um, creativity is clearly not. It's not your 100% your own work, and I think to actually amplify or increase the potential, potentiate the creativity, you have to soak in other people, other individuals' creative work, because you have to work with something. You can't work with an empty slate. You have to, like reading books. You read a lot of books, it gives you insights, and it maybe potentiates the creativity. Why? Because it came with that whatever knowledge you soaked in. But if you didn't have that knowledge, what could you do? It'd be very hard to play with an empty slate. So, that's kind of what I realized. Even going through depressive episodes, it kind of came to realization how much the expansiveness, or when consciousness is actually open, when you're essentially when you're more in a positive state, you're generally more open, versus a negative state, you're going to be more closed. And you find a huge distinction between the level of creativity or the utilization of it based on the distinction between the positive and the negative, the yin, the yang. It definitely creates, you know, and of course, I think with poetry, for especially, I think the deep, dark poetry kind of shows, the depressive side. Uh, but it's very hard, at least for me, to even create anything in a depressive episode. If I am depressed, very difficult, very difficult to even. It's like my mind's completely blank. But it's probably, when you get the energy and the reserves, you can ultimately uh, unleash whatever was, the depths of, the depression. Would it kind of maybe the insights, or kind of the insight into it, or into the experience. Because if your whole life is most a lot of your life is uh, saturated in, you know uh, agony or just pain and and despair, it really that's kind of how the mind becomes distorted in that way, and whatever creativity comes out, it's whatever kind of is fed in the subconscious, and that can lag over an extended period of time, and it's never whatever you feed into the subconscious, even in a future period, it could actually affect your mental state and kind of what comes out and what you do create. So yeah, that's just my synopsis on creativity and how I think it's just being a math major. It's always been good to uh, give precedence on the great innovators who came before and ultimately allowed any creative achievement to be possible. So that's how I'm gonna end right here. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.